It's up!
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparin with you guys. I'm doing it from home today because I'm a little bit under the weather, and we've got some amazing stories for you guys today, including one of Trump's co-conspirators asking for a mute. That'll be a little bit later in the program, and obviously they averted the government shutdown and all the different things that flow from that. We'll discuss all of it in a minute. But before we do anything else, I've got a couple of big announcements for you guys. So announcement number one is that we are beginning Operation Hope. So I'm going to explain this more fully on tomorrow's program. And announcement number two is, yes, I am considering running for president. So I'm going to explain both of those real quick for you guys right now, and then we will continue to talk about it throughout the week. So Operation Hope has begun, and it's very, very simple. It's us collaborating, meaning us, the host of TYT, and you guys at home, the community, working together to come up with plans together, collaborate together, and then to execute those plans in the real world and in social media. So I'm gonna explain the mechanics of how we're going to do that. It's very simple. It's on the main page of our home site right now, tyt.com. And it's at this point just a discussion board where we start the ideas, okay? And then we will start to begin to do those ideas in the real world together. But I put up a blog post about the first project we want to do together, paid family leave, and trying to get that passed from the outside. So please check that out. And I'm gonna jump back into the discussion and start to organize as I have already a little bit. And so you guys know that we do the show 6 to 8 p.m. every day, Monday through Friday, Eastern, of course, right here on youtube.com/The Young Turks and tyt.com/live. So we're gonna do our regular show today and on Monday. I'm sorry, on Tuesday. At the end of our regular show at 8 o'clock today, I'm gonna do a book reading. Tomorrow, I'm going to do Operation Hope and explain more fully what it is. I'm gonna show you an interview with Ro Khanna that begins to explain how we can make a difference in the world. And the whole idea is an audacious idea that us together, the TYT hosts and you guys, can make a difference in the world. And I believe that with every fiber of my being, and we're gonna prove it together. So that begins now. So now, in terms of the presidential campaign, that actually does not have to do with Operation Hope. It just happens to coincide at this time. Now, is it a campaign yet? No. Am I very seriously considering it? Yes. Have I done some work behind the scenes to effectuate it? Yes, I have. Okay. Does that mean I've made a final decision on it? No. It depends on some of those things that are afoot here to see if we can execute it and execute it properly in a way that we could actually win. So if you're wondering why in the world I would consider this, especially given the fact that I was not born in America, I'm a naturalized citizen, I'm gonna explain that for you. Let me just break this down real quick, and then I'm gonna ask you to participate in this decision throughout the week. So the reasons for potentially running are, by far and away, number one is I believe Joe Biden's going to lose. And now I believe a lot of people think that Joe Biden's going to lose, and we can get a better candidate, and it could be me, but it could also be any of the governors, Governor Whitmer, Governor Newsom, Governor Shapiro, Governor Beshear. These are all amazing Democratic governors, and they could all easily beat Donald Trump. And finally, I am not the only one saying that. Now we have a whole host of people, from Bill Maher to James Carville to even Joe Scarborough, David Ignatius at the Washington Post, and they're beginning to catch on to what I've been saying for some time now, which is Joe Biden was a hero for beating Donald Trump last time, but if he sticks around when he's 13 points lower than he was last time, and he barely won the Electoral College by 44,000 votes, he's going to be incredibly selfish, and he will unfortunately turn into the villain, the guy who gave away democracy just because he wanted a slightly better legacy of a second term. So in a sense, if I go in, I would be a proxy not just for myself and not just for progressives, but to bring in any other candidate so we can actually beat Donald Trump. And as I've told you guys many, many times on the Young Turks, that is the overwhelming #1 goal. I believe Donald Trump is an actual fascist. I believe he tried to do a coup against America with this fake elector scheme. We've talked about it a lot. And I do not want to go quietly into that good night. And I do not want to run into that iceberg when I see the iceberg. So I'm going to do anything and everything possible to steer the ship away from the iceberg. So that is the overwhelming #1 priority. But #2, since I'm a naturalized citizen, there is this mythology that you cannot run for president, and I'm sick of it. It is definitely wrong. It is constitutionally wrong. Case law proves that it is wrong definitively, but conventional wisdom persists. There's about 25 million naturalized citizens in America, and the very first thing we always hear is, "Ha ha, you can't run for president." Well, it's a way of alienating us and making us feel like, oh, you guys aren't as American as we are. And it's absurd. The Supreme Court has ruled it is absurd, and there's very clear case law about it, not about running for president, but that the fact that naturalized citizens have 100% identical rights as US born citizens, and that is because the Constitution was amended by the 5th and 14th Amendments. So if all I do was run in any campaign or anyone else, and they finally got the Supreme Court to say, of course they could run for president, as our previous case law shows, then that would be a great service to the country as well, I believe. And by the way, just really quick, Ted Lieu is a United States congressman. In fact, he's my congressman. His family came here from Taiwan when he was 3 years old. He's a colonel in the United States Air Force. Are we going to question his loyalty? We think he's more loyal to Taiwan. That's absurd. And in fact, the Supreme Court has said questioning people's loyalties like that is not only absurd, it's unconstitutional. I can give you countless examples. Patrick Bet-David, a right-wing leaning show that I went on recently. He's the host of it. He's an Armenian Christian, immigrated during the Iranian Revolution. His family fled Iran. He then was served in the 101st Airborne. Is the idea that he's loyal to Iran instead of America? It's absurd. And again, it doesn't matter that it's absurd, it's unconstitutional, as the Supreme Court has ruled. So that would be another great reason to go in the race. But back to the main issue at hand, which is Trump and Biden and who's going to win this election. That is far, far more important than anything else. The third reason I'd run is to give you guys an honest, strong, progressive option. And so what do I mean by that? You know my strength. What I mean by that is I will do anything and everything to pass the laws that we care about. So I will not listen to congeniality or etiquette or any of that nonsense. There will be no talk of parliamentarians. And we will pass things like paid family leave, public option, higher minimum wage, etc. And #2, I'm honest. I'm not a regular politician. I don't really even want to do it. I love this job. This is the job I want to do. But for God's sake, isn't anyone going to argue for things that we all agree on? You've heard me, if you've watched Young Turks, say this 1,000 times. Paid family leave polls at 84%. What else do you need to fight for it, and to fight for it aggressively? So if it's someone like me, or perhaps literally me, I'm gonna fight like hell for you guys on incredibly popular positions. This should not be a novel concept, but unfortunately in American politics, it is. Everyone has their own agenda, no one has your agenda. So I will be honest, I will be strong, and yes, I'll be progressive. And if the mainstream media and others who usually savage progressives are concerned, oh my God, he might actually deliver for Americans and he's a progressive and not beholden to corporate rule, don't worry guys. If I get to 20 to 25%, every governor in the country is gonna come into this race, whether Joe Biden likes it or not. So everyone in Washington knows that, and that is another excellent reason to run. So, but having said all that, there are great difficulties, and we will talk about that in the upcoming week. And then, like I said, I might literally ask you to weigh in and maybe even decide. So stay tuned right here for that. And obviously an interesting week, an interesting circumstance we find ourselves in. But the most important point is Joe Biden has to win the race by 5 points. Any Democrat has to win the race by 5 points in order to win the Electoral College. And Joe Biden is nowhere near it and falling fast. So we have to act right now to get more Democratic candidates into the race because we must defeat Trump. All right, that's our first segment. We're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, all the stories that I promised you, including the government shutdown, what happened, why did the Democrats vote along with the Republicans, and so much more. We'll be right back. All right, back during the social break here, guys. So first of all, I am going to do that book reading. I got 3 excellent segments picked out for you guys tonight, and I'm going to take your questions as well. We're going to have it freely available to everyone for the first 15 minutes, and then members only after that. So good day to sign up, tyt.com/join. Obviously, good day to buy the book, tyt.com/justice. And by the way, I should tell you guys this. I mean, I said it in a live video, but a lot of you that watch the show live, the main show, probably did not hear this. We sold enough books to make the New York Times bestseller list. We would have come in at number 13. It's a list of 15 books. They didn't put us on. So they say they have a complicated algorithm and it takes many things into account. And it is not just strictly an order of book sales, so that part is true. Whether it's true that their algorithm kept me off or they decided not to put me on for other reasons, we'll almost certainly never know. So I don't know what to think about it, but I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for getting us on the list in terms of the number of books we had to sell. You did your job and you're amazing and you're awesome. The New York Times didn't put it on there. There's nothing we could do about them. So we can't, it appears we can't convince them. The only option we have is to beat them. But the audiobook is still could make the New York Times bestseller list, and that would be the same exact thing. It just comes out monthly, so that's going to come out a little bit later in this week for September sales. Now it started in September 19th, so it's a disadvantage there, and it's for the whole month. So we'll see what happens, but I love you guys. Thank you for working so hard on that. And if you're frustrated, believe me, brothers and sisters, I'm frustrated. Never 1 ounce of approval from anyone in the establishment, ever, never any acknowledgement. And you guys are, we have 5 billion views a year. But apparently we're all invisible. So that's Tuesday for us. All right, Uriah Heap says, don't forget to buy your Powerball numbers as it is at least 1 billion now. You could give a wee bit to the Turks. Well, if you do win and you give some to us, that would be awesome. But look, man, I'm so desperate for hope. Like I'm thinking about giving you guys money. Like we need some sort of hope in this country. Anyways, 10H714 says, Justice is Coming for Real is a fantastic read, well thought out, cogent, challenging, like my former college days. Thank you, Cenk. Wow, thank you. That's wonderful. Teddy Cool wrote in, it's a stupid, selfish move by Biden to run again based off of his health, age, and popularity rating. Biggest election of our lifetime, and democracy is at stake. If I was Biden and I'm in my 80s and I see that polling, I'm getting out of the race for the good of the country. But apparently he thinks his reputation and legacy is more important. By the way, he's inviting us to damage his reputation because apparently that's the only thing he cares about. Maybe that'll get him out of the race. All right, we'll be right back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We're gonna get to the regular news. Now also Mike Rendell and Jeff Gates with us, and thank you guys for signing up at Premium. We really, really appreciate you guys. And Chris Birch, who gifted 5 Young Turks memberships. Love you guys. Thank you for supporting us and each other. Anna.
All right, well, why don't we give you all an update on the civil trial that Donald Trump is now facing. Today was the first day. Let's get to it.
I think we're seeing something that we frankly did not expect. There's a camera in that courtroom. Was that supposed to be, or would they just be simply ushered out when we're gavelled to order?
There were initially cameras allowed during former President Donald Trump's first day at trial. This is the civil trial he's facing over allegations of financial fraud. Now, just as a quick refresher, just last week, the judge overseeing this trial ruled in a summary judgment that Trump and his co-defendants, which include his sons, did engage in financial fraud. We'll give you the details on that in just a moment. But New York State Attorney General Letitia James is in fact suing Trump for financial fraud. And about an hour before the moment that you're about to watch on tape, Trump's team put out an opposition research file on prosecutor Letitia James, which is part of the reason why I'm assuming she had the look on her face that you're about to see. Let's watch the video.
Quite frankly, I'm not too sure that both parties would want this. I think that Trump views this, the optics of this, as working to his advantage. Look, people looking at this live picture right now will be either filled with rage or they will be thrilled. And that's the problem, is that you have James now being shown in the background, you've got Trump in the foreground, and it fulfills the narrative on both sides. Trump is likely right. I mean, he's being shown in a sort of tag team series of prosecutions and civil lawsuits where one prosecutor tags another. They're all insisting on these trials occurring before the election.
Now, the voice that you heard in that tape was Jonathan Turley, who was speaking to Fox News at the time. Before I get to more details about what transpired in the courtroom today, Cenk, do you have any thoughts on the commentary you heard?
Yeah, so I think that Donald Trump not asking for a jury trial is going to turn into an epic disaster. In terms of Letitia James looking at him in an angry way, I mean, how would you look at him if he called you all those names, right? So, and I don't think that anybody who supports Donald Trump gets to complain about anyone else looking mean or angry or unhinged or anything along those lines. And so there's a lot more to this case, but Donald Trump is in real trouble. And almost every legal analyst, including all the conservative legal analysts, including Jonathan Turley, who you heard on that tape, agree this case is open and shut, and Donald Trump is going to lose an enormous amount of money. I'm not sure he has that much money to lose.
Right, and the prosecutors are looking for $250 million as part of the punishment for the financial fraud. So look, we're gonna get to the Oppo file that the Trump team released on Letitia James in just a moment. But before we do, I wanted to fill you in on more details about the unique nature of this trial. We'll get to the decision by the defense attorneys to move forward with this trial without a jury, which I agree seems to be a big mistake. Now, the judge that you also saw in the video is Judge Arthur Engoron, who is overseeing or presiding over the trial. He already ruled in that summary judgment last week that Trump, his adult sons, his businesses, and executives are liable for persistent and repeated financial fraud. Now, the civil trial is basically meant to resolve the other claims that prosecutor James has brought forward, which include falsifying business records, conspiracy to falsify business records, issuing false financial statements, conspiracy to falsify false financial statements, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. And so just to fill you in a little more, the allegation was that Donald Trump essentially inflated the value of his assets in order to secure favorable terms on loans or to obtain the loans in the first place, and also to obtain insurance. Now, those claims require the Attorney General to demonstrate that the false valuations mattered and that Trump acted with fraudulent intent. And that's according to what the judge Engoron said. Trump's attorneys claim that what Trump engaged in was basically a victimless crime, which is real easy to say because it's harder to show a direct a causal relationship. But the fact of the matter is, when this type of fraud takes place, everyone else ends up paying a price for it in the form of higher fees, more expensive fees. So to say that it's a victimless crime is ridiculous if you ask me. Again, the lawsuit is seeking $250 million, the removal of the Trump family from the Trump organization's leadership, and sanctions that would essentially prevent Trump, his children, and his company from operating a business in the state of New York. Now, the judge, Engoron, has already stripped the business certifications from Trump, the Trump organization, and the other defendants in his last ruling. That included the summary judgment. But according to CNBC, it's still unclear if that means the Trump organization is now permanently unable to do business in New York, or if it will be basically legally reconstituted at some later date. Now, Trump has claimed that a disclaimer on his financial statements absolved him of any wrongdoing. He's also arguing that the value of his assets were not, in fact, exaggerated. He posted the following on Truth Social just last night. Engoron values Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida at $18 million when it is worth 50 to 100 times that amount. In other words, Trump is claiming that Mar-a-Lago is worth $900 million to $1.8 billion, which seems like a lot, but I have to be honest with you, I'm not too familiar with that property, how expansive it is, and I mean, it looks like it could be as much as $1 billion. I don't know. I'm not an expert on valuations in regard to real estate and resorts like that. But any comments so far, Cenk?
Yeah. So first of all, on Mar-a-Lago, I briefly worked in real estate. I'm not an expert in Palm Beach properties either, but there's a 0% chance that is worth 900 million to 1.8 billion. It's the usual ridiculous hyperbole and exaggeration that Trump does, which is deeply ironic because he's in trouble in this case for fraudulently hyping up the value of his real estate. That thing, if it's 10 times more than 18 million, which it probably isn't, it's probably what the judge said it is. But if it was 10 times more, it'd be $180 million, and that would be very impressive. There is no way in the world it is 50 to 100 times that. No way. And only a jackass would say that when you're on trial for overly hyping your value of your properties, right? But speaking of only a jackass would, so Trump is attacking the judge when it's not a jury trial. That means the judge is going to decide. He's going to be the only person who decides. So in the other cases where he's attacking the judges, it's also dumb in other ways, but at least you could make an argument to the jury, and especially if there's a MAGA person on the jury, the judge is being unfair to me, right? But you can't make an argument to the judge that he's being unfair to you because it's him. I don't know if he realizes that. Now, another really important point that other legal experts have made is that this is the type of case that is very unlikely to win on appeal because so much of it is factually based, and a jury didn't decide it, a judge decided it. So they're very unlikely to say, no, we believe the lower court judge was wrong on the facts. They usually leave the facts alone, whether a jury or a judge decided it, but especially if a judge decided it. They usually appeal based on law, not facts. So he's in a world of trouble. He has greatly alienated the judge in this case, which no other defendant in their right mind would do. And by the way, there's a great question as to why he didn't ask for a jury trial. Remember, all he needs is one MAGA guy. And although this is a civil case, so it's a little bit different, he'd still have to win overall. But overall, I think he's a lot better off with a jury than he is with a judge. A judge just makes rational decisions, generally speaking, and is not swayed by his emotional appeals, his political appeals, etc. It's possible that his idiotic lawyers listening to their idiotic client either chose not to have a jury trial, which is just terrible, terrible legal strategy, or forgot to check the box. And yes, it's a little box on the form, and it's not impossible that these blundering idiots forgot to check off the box. So $250 million is probably more than Donald Trump has. And I don't know how this plays out in terms of, okay, he can't have businesses in New York anymore, and he has to, now the judge has already said that a receivership is beginning for his properties in New York, which he can no longer control. What did they do with those properties? Did they transfer to a different company in a different state? What did they do with his properties that are outside of New York? That's where it gets complicated. But right now, he's on a freight train to bankruptcy. That's my sense of it. And by the way, if Mar-a-Lago is really worth $1.8 billion, then he shouldn't be sweating this. He could easily get a loan from Mar-a-Lago and pay this off, no sweat at all. So Donald, I'm sure you're gonna be okay, right? I mean, I'm taking your word for it on Mar-a-Lago, then you shouldn't be bothered by this at all.
It's possible that his defense team made a calculation that having a jury trial in New York, which is obviously a blue state, would not bode well for Trump. So that's a possibility as well. The incompetence, of course, is another possibility. It's not like we haven't seen incompetence from Trump's attorneys in the past. But I do want to move on to the opposition file that the Trump team put out against Attorney General Letitia James. Apparently he attacked her for a bunch of things that are irrelevant to the trial itself, including the crime rate in New York and the fact that she had previously supported Drag Queen Story Hour. But the most substantive of Trump's attacks, and honestly that isn't a high bar, was his claim that James is biased against him. And this is what the Oppo file included. Letitia James made clear that getting Trump was the motivating force behind her campaign for Attorney General, asserted the Trump campaign, citing James's 2018 promise to shine a bright light into every dark corner of his real estate dealings, and warning that she had her eyes on Trump Tower. Trump submitted that James's comments demonstrated a prejudgment of the facts and a political predisposition to the issues she now must manage apolitically. That was a mistake and a typo, and dispassionately. Now, let me just note that I think that this is the reason why you have a significant portion of Republican voters feeling as though Donald Trump actually did nothing wrong, and all of these prosecutions, whether it be the civil case that we're talking about now or some of the criminal cases that he has been indicted in, it's nothing more than a witch hunt. It's politically motivated. This is how you get the Republican base to essentially reject the idea that Trump ever engaged in any criminality. This is the kind of messaging they're getting day in and day out. And I'm not sure if there would be a way to pursue Donald Trump and his alleged criminality without it appearing political. But the one point that Trump makes in regard to this particular case that I think is legitimate is that it took Letitia James this long to file the civil lawsuit. And it does appear, whether you want to accept it or not, it does appear that the timing is political, but I do believe that the charges have merit. Obviously, the judge overseeing this case believes that the charges had merit, which is why he issued that summary judgment just last week. And any other ordinary American who engages in this level of financial fraud would certainly be prosecuted for doing so. So we'll see how this all ends up. But I also have to just say that video that we opened with Letitia James giving him the dirty eye and all of that, then you go to the judge and he looks jovial and excited. It really isn't a good look. So I don't think the camera should have been in the courtroom to begin with.
Yeah, well, look, the camera wasn't supposed to be there. That's why they were escorted out. And I don't know how a judge is supposed to look. I know that Donald Trump looks like a maniac 24/7. So if Anna gets to say it, I get to say it about Letitia James or the judge or whatever. But if you're a Trump fan, you don't get to say how anybody else looks, okay? So you can't say, oh, I'm with the lunatic, but I didn't like the way that Letitia James looked. So by the way, Donald Trump could have had a couple of interesting defenses here. One is the victimless crime that Anna talked about. I don't think it's convincing. I agree with her, but at least it would have been an interesting defense. He could have gone with, there's a disclaimer in there, and he's now belatedly trying to do that. But they mainly argued that the properties really were worth that much, which was impossible to prove. There was no way he was gonna win on that. He has different numbers on the tax forms. It's just an open and shut case. I mean, this was butchered in every way imaginable, and he's almost already lost everything. Remember, a lot of the judgments already came in. And I want to be clear about what's left. So the judge has already ruled, yes, there's, based on the numbers, unquestionable fraud. But now they have to rule on, for some of the charges, intent. And intent's important. And if he's trying to prove that he had no intent in inflating his numbers, again, that inflating the Mar-a-Lago number in the middle of this trial is not going to help his cause that he's not doing it with intent. And by the way, in that same angry rant on Truth Social against the judge and against all of these different things, he said, and how come I'm not allowed a jury trial? Because you didn't ask for one, jackass.
It's just, all of it is so exhausting. But this is just one of the cases Trump is dealing with. There's a lot more to get to, including some of the criminal indictments. I now want to move on to that because there is, of course, an indictment that Trump is dealing with in the state of Georgia having to do with election meddling. And there's a potentially big update on that. Former New York Commissioner Bernie Kerik has been subpoenaed to testify in the Fulton County, Georgia trial against Donald Trump and his co-conspirators. This is, of course, the election meddling case that accuses Donald Trump and his co-conspirators of attempting to overturn the 2020 presidential election with a slate of fake electors. Now, what's interesting about this story is that the attorney representing Kerik is saying that, well, maybe, but we got to get some immunity first. And that, of course, has led to a lot of questions in regard to whether or not Kerik could cooperate with prosecutors in this case. Now, I want to throw cold water on the notion that he's going to provide any damning evidence in regard to Donald Trump. I'm going to make my case on that in just a moment. But first, here are the details. Kerik's lawyer, Tim Parlatore, is demanding that his client be granted immunity in exchange for testifying, pointing out that prosecutors indicated in the indictment that Kerik was a co-conspirator in the case. While not named in the indictment, CNN previously reported that Kerik is co-conspirator number 5. So he is in fact facing charges in the Georgia case, okay? Not to be mistaken with the special counsel Jack Smith's prosecution of Donald Trump and election meddling. Now, Fulton County prosecutors allege that Kerik took part in several meetings with lawmakers in Pennsylvania and Arizona, and states that these were states that Trump was, of course, contesting following the 2020 presidential election. So that includes the meeting that he attended at the White House on November 25th, 2020 with a group of Pennsylvania legislators. Trump, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani, and Jenna Ellis were also present for that meeting. Now, the lawyer, Parlatore, wrote, no competent criminal attorney would allow Mr. Kerik to testify absent a grant of immunity. The judge says that Kerik will invoke his Fifth Amendment rights and refuse to answer questions unless he receives written assurance that he will not be prosecuted. The judge also claims that when he previously expressed this demand to the district attorney's office, they told him, quote, if we wanted to indict Kerik, we would have already done so, but refused to put assurances in writing. So that is what he wants. He wants assurances in writing. And finally, he writes in his letter to the prosecutors, to be clear, Mr. Kerik has done nothing wrong and rejects your claim that he is a co-conspirator in any alleged criminal conduct. You made the public accusation, so now you must live with the consequences of Mr. Kerik and presumably all other alleged unindicted co-conspirators invoking their Fifth Amendment rights and refusing to testify. Now, Kerik is not one of the unnamed, unindicted co-conspirators described in Jack Smith's indictment of Trump in the federal 2020 election probe. Nonetheless, Parlatore basically also suggested that Fulton County prosecutors coordinate with the special counsel, Jack Smith, to ensure that he has immunity in that case as well. Now, 2 of the 19 defendants, pro-Trump lawyer Kenneth Chesebro and former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, are actually set to go on trial on October 23rd. And news just broke before showtime indicating that he is potentially willing to testify against Sidney Powell. But I do not think, and this is just my prediction, that he is going to provide any damning evidence or testimony in regard to Donald Trump. Now, why do I think that? Just 3 years ago, Donald Trump did a big favor for Kerik, who had been convicted of tax fraud and had been sentenced to 3 years in prison as a result. In fact, here's Kerik discussing that on television.
Well, when I answered the phone, the person on the other end said he was getting the president on the line. The president came on And he started out the conversation saying that he was in the process, as we were speaking, of signing my full presidential pardon, which would expunge my federal record. I did get emotional. I got extremely emotional. I can't tell you exactly what I said, what he said after that, but you know, it was a good day for me. It was a very happy day for me.
Sure, I know you had your former boss and friend Rudy Giuliani lobbying for you. Some people at this network also lobbied. Did you know this was coming, sir?
No. No, you know, I actually applied for my presidential pardon under President Obama. This has been going on for 4 years. No, I did not know it was coming. Had no advance notice until the phone rang.
So Cenk, I mean, look, there's no honor among thieves. You never know, but I think it would be shocking if he turned on Trump and testified against him. I really do think this is about Sidney Powell. What do you think?
Yeah, no, right before we got on air, Parlatore, the Carrick's lawyer, went on CNN and he explained, yeah, they have evidence about Sidney Powell, and he said it is not about Rudy Giuliani or Donald Trump. Now, that leads to two really interesting conclusions. So first of all, well, actually, one's a question, the other one's a conclusion. The question is the prosecutor in Fulton County going to say, sure, I'll take the evidence against Sidney Powell and I'll give you immunity for it? Or does she think that Carrick was so deeply involved that she doesn't want to give immunity just for evidence against Sidney Powell, who they probably have fairly strong evidence against? But more importantly, the conclusion is, it is now official that it is throw Sidney Powell under the bus legal strategy, certainly for some of the defendants, and maybe all the way up to Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. And Parlatore explained, Sidney Powell was the one person who was saying things without evidence, and that's why the Trump team got rid of her. It's all her fault. So, okay, now we know the strategy. Everybody's gonna blame Sidney Powell. No, how is Sidney Powell going to react to that? Is she gonna release the Kraken, as she famously said she would on behalf of Trump, but now against Trump? I don't know. I don't know what kind of evidence Sidney Powell has against Trump or Rudy Giuliani, but it looks like they're all turning on her.
Well, yeah, I mean, if they're gonna turn on her, and it seems increasingly likely that is what their game plan is, I am curious what she's willing to provide in the form of testimony against the co-conspirators here. We'll see, but you know, when someone else's ass is on the line, all of a sudden loyalties don't matter as much, unless you're in the mob and you don't want to be a rat. We'll see.
Yeah, for sure. And remember, they all stood at the lectern together, right? But the Rudys and the Sidney Powells and the Jenna Ellises, they were all together. They did this throughout together, and you knew they were going to pick a fall guy. So it turns out she's the fall guy. But let's see if they all stick to the story, because remember, one of the 19 co-conspirators in that Fulton County case has already cooperated with prosecutors and has pled guilty, and that's Scott Hall. So he's a lower level figure. He's a Republican that helped to tamper with that voting booth, and where they got into and accessed the voting records, which is very illegal. And so we don't yet know what he has testified to behind the scenes. Is he also just on the bandwagon of blaming Sidney Powell? Is that good enough for Fani Willis, who's a prosecutor there? Or has he implicated Trump or others? So Trump's not out of the woods at all on Bernie Carrick or any of the other co-defendants in Atlanta. But for now, it appears that their target, all the co-defendants' targets, as far as we can tell, is Sidney Powell, and trying to make her the scapegoat for all of this.
When we come back from the break, we'll fill you all in on what happened over the weekend in regard to the government funding bill. There is a battle within Republicans in the state house. I'm sorry, not the state house, the House of Representatives. So we'll give you that and more when we come back. Don't miss it.
back on TYT during the social break here. Let's go to members as usual. Richards writes in, my 86-year-old auntie is an avid TYT fan, and I gifted her a membership and Justice is Coming. She read in a few days and really liked it. Okay, that's awesome. Well, tell your auntie that I say hi, and I hope she's watching now. Hey, auntie, and thanks for doing that. You're amazing for doing that. Keep spreading the word, guys. Camp Corona Dad said, when you mentioned the governors who could run, I noticed one name consistently omitted. The guy is popular, handled COVID masterfully, has made his share of public takedowns of the orange buffoon. He's from the Midwest. His state is covered in windmills and manufacturing electric vehicles. His state is hosting the Democratic Convention, and he's sitting on a huge pile of money. Pritzker. No, brother, it was not an omission on purpose. Pritzker's a perfectly good choice. Look, again, with the Newsoms and the Pritzkers and the Whitmers, do I love all of them? No. Do I have critique of all of them? Yes. Do I think a progressive would be better? Yes. But would Pritzker be better than Biden at beating Trump? Yes, almost definitely. And he is a billionaire, so that helps a little bit in financing his campaign as well. So good point. Little Mac McGee says, Cenk, I don't care if you're a loser or a lost cause, brother. But no, I'm sorry, that's a hilarious Freudian slip on my part. Cenk, I don't care if you lose or are a lost cause, brother. I would rather go down fighting with you than lay down and die. And guys, look, as I'm gonna explain in Operation Hope, our slogan is gonna be get caught trying. So here I am getting caught trying. So thank you for saying that, Little Mac McGee. And you never know what's possible in the world. Uri Heap says, don't know how you didn't make the list, Cenk. I bought 5 books, 3 hardcover, 1 audio, and 1 Kindle. It's kind of funny, after reading the 3rd book of the 5, I started to notice a pattern in your writing that you keep repeating yourself book after book. No, that's hilarious because they got 5 books and they're reading all 5. They're all the same book. But you're amazing for getting 5. We made the list in terms of the numbers of books that we sold. Why the New York Times decided not to put us on it, that's their business. And look, I could be a lot angrier about it, but I don't know what good it does. And I don't know for sure that it was personal. I just don't know. Twitch writes in, Rocky Mountain High wrote in on Twitch. Just got my signed Justice Coming in the mail today. Can't wait to start reading tonight after the show. Thank you, Cenk, for the book and all the incredible progressive content over the years. I love TYT. We love you right back. We've got a book reading tonight with a couple of sections of the book right after the show. Everybody can check it out. Amber Cole writes in on YouTube membership. I totally vote for you, Cenk. TYT was one of the amazing platforms I used to homeschool my son in government. Wow, you are all outstanding. Thank you, Amber. Michael Malbon wrote in, Cenk versus Trump is the debate America needs. I mean, look, guys, think about it. Me versus Trump versus Biden versus Trump. Do you think those two things are close? I would eviscerate Donald Trump, and Biden would look confused as he did in the 3 debates, like, oh, what is going on? All right. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Mark Lee match fishing with you guys. So thank you for joining. They joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. You can do it on tyt.com/join. And Moondragon just gifted 10 Young Turks memberships on YouTube. Love you for your generosity. We appreciate it. Casper, what's next?
Well, big news broke over the weekend in regard to the government funding bill. So let's get into the details.
That's all right if Republicans and Democrats join together to do what is right. If somebody wants to make a motion against me, bring it. There has to be an adult in the room.
I want you to listen to what Hakeem Jeffries said after the.
Oh, Kevin's new boss. Let's hear from him.
Listen.
It was a victory for the American people and a complete and total surrender by right-wing extremists who throughout the year have tried to hijack the Congress.
There you have Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz getting extra salty over the fact that Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy struck a deal with congressional Democrats in order to pass what's known as a stopgap bill or a continuing resolution that will keep the government funded until mid-November. Now, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy worked with those Democrats. That is why Matt Gaetz is so furious about this, and he is now threatening to do away with his leadership role in the House of Representatives. We're gonna get to that in just a moment, but first let's get to some details about the bill that was signed by President Joe Biden. Now, the measure was approved on a vote of 335 to 91, with 209 Democrats and 126 Republicans voting in favor, and 90 Republicans and 1 Democrat in opposition. Just a quick side note in regard to the 1 Democrat who voted against this, that was Representative Mike Quigley from Illinois, who had a problem with the stopgap measure failing to include any funding for Ukraine. I think it's notable that the defense sector is his 4th top campaign contributor. I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that he was so gung-ho in voting against this over the lack of military funding to Ukraine. But let's move on. Then you have the Senate. They also held a vote and they voted in favor of the legislation about 3 hours prior to the deadline. And then the Senate jettisoned its own stopgap measure that contained $6 billion for Ukraine, but then they approved the House version on an 88-9 vote. Now, here's some of the relevant details in regard to what is included in the stopgap bill. A coalition of House Democrats and Republicans voted to pass a plan that would keep money flowing to government agencies and provide billions of dollars for disaster recovery efforts. Republicans who voted against the bill were unhappy about the fact that it left out severe immigration restrictions. How about you guys actually do your jobs and work on a comprehensive immigration reform bill? They can't be bothered by that. Instead, they use government funding bills or lately things like the debt ceiling negotiations in order to include these provisions. Of course, they don't want a standalone bill. They don't want to do their jobs or take any accountability for their failures in actually passing any immigration reform. The bill, though, the stopgap measure did not include money for Ukraine, despite a push by the White House and members of both parties to include that funding. Now, House Democrats supported this anyway in order to avoid a widespread government shutdown. Democrats did not want to be accused of putting the United States aid to Ukraine ahead of keeping the government agencies open and paying 2 million members of the military and 1.5 million federal employees. And look, Ukraine seems to be some sort of sticking point. Congress has approved about $113 billion in military, humanitarian, and economic aid in 4 packages since the invasion by Russia. And Biden has requested another $24 billion. No paid family leave, though, so something to keep in mind. On top of that, McCarthy has shown a willingness to work with Democrats, and the extreme wing of the Republican Party is now threatening his leadership role as a result of that. Representative Andy Biggs, for instance, put out a statement saying that instead of siding with his own party, Kevin McCarthy sided with 209 Democrats to push through a continuing resolution that maintains the Biden-Pelosi-Schumer spending levels and policies. He allowed the DC Uniparty to win again. Should he remain Speaker of the House, he asks? And of course, Matt Gaetz, who has used this entire debacle as a way to get as much attention as possible, does not believe that McCarthy should remain Speaker of the House. He says that his leadership role is, quote, on tenuous grounds, and he gets into it a little more in this next clip.
Since the mid-90s, this country has been governed by revolving continuing resolution and omnibus spending bill. And what that means is that America's lawmakers take one up or down vote on the funding of the entire government. That is crazy. That is the reason we're $33 trillion in debt. We want to move to single subject spending bills. So he made that commitment, he broke it. And if at this time, next week, Kevin McCarthy is still Speaker of the House, it will be because the Democrats bailed him out, and he can be their Speaker, not mine.
So when do you make this move?
You'll be seeing it this week.
This week, okay.
That's why I came on the show this week.
That's why he went on the show this week. He's planning on pursuing this retaliation against McCarthy very soon. Now, how does McCarthy feel about it? Well, he explains in the next clip.
I want to start, though, on the news this morning from Congressman Matt Gaetz, who says he's going to seek a motion to vacate. He's going to try to oust you as Speaker of the House.
That's nothing new. He's tried to do that from the moment I ran for office. Look.
Well, this time he says he's going to keep going. May not get there before the 15th ballot, but it took 15 for Kevin McCarthy. He says he's coming for you. Can you survive?
Yes, I'll survive. You know, this is personal with Matt. Matt voted against the most conservative ability to protect our border, secure our border. He's more interested in securing TV interviews than doing something. He wanted to push us into a shutdown, even threatening his own district with all the military people there who would not be paid, only because he wants to take this motion. So be it, bring it on, let's get over with it, and let's start governing. If he's upset because he tried to push us in a shutdown and I made sure government didn't shut down, then let's have that fight.
So Cenk, McCarthy clearly sees himself as the adult in the room and was willing to do what the Republican Party, of course, doesn't really like him doing, which is negotiating with the Democrats. What do you think about this? Do you think that this is going to hurt him politically, especially when it comes to re-election?
Yeah, so let me take it one at a time. As usual, we're gonna give you a nuanced and honest answers to all these questions. So first off, in the beginning, there was many demands that the extreme right wing had in these government shutdown, including absurd things like defund the entire Department of Justice so that they could shut down Trump's cases. Yeah, that was never gonna happen. There's no chance in hell that that would happen. It's insane and absurd that they asked for that. And then there was the standard ask, hey, we don't want to fund Ukraine. We want to give an extreme amount of money to border security. God knows where that goes, and disaster relief. Okay, and then so what happened with those? So disaster relief, both sides agreed to anyway. So that was neutral. The Democrats wanted extra funding for Ukraine, but that was a Democratic request. They didn't get it. The Republicans wanted all those different demands about border security, and they didn't get that yet. So it comes out as kind of neutral at this point. Now, I do want to be fair, even though obviously not a big fan of Matt Gaetz, but his request for single subject bills is not an unreasonable one. And it looks like he's finally figured out that he should stop asking for the moon and the sky and the Jewish space lasers or whatever else that he imagined that he could get in these absurd requests, and just focus on the one thing that makes sense. I've seen him say that now more clearly and focus on that one. And look, that's for him to take to his caucus and figure out if that's how they want to deal with it, et cetera. But this idea that somehow the Democrats won and McCarthy is now beholden to them and working with them, what did the Democrats do? They literally got absolutely nothing out of this. So I mean, other than like anytime the Republicans don't get something absurd that they asked for, they say, well, look at that, the Democrats won again. No, the Democrats didn't win a single thing from this. And in fact, more Democrats voted for this than Republicans. And if I was the Democrats, and I literally had this conversation with the Representative Ro Khanna on Friday when I was in Washington, D.C., and not only me, but he said, Representative Khanna said, yes, the Democrats should ask for something in return, like perhaps a vote on paid family leave. You don't have to guarantee that it's gonna pass, but a very, very simple and doable request of a vote on paid family leave in the House. But as usual, the Democrats asked for nothing and got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, like they didn't want to suffer the same fate that McCarthy was also trying to avoid, which was taking the blame for a government shutdown. So, I mean, I don't know, look, I don't know what to say. It's a stopgap measure. They have about a month and a half or a little less than a month and a half to negotiate what a lengthier government funding bill would look like. Is there a possibility that the Democrats are going to fight aggressively to include provisions that help ordinary Americans? Probably not. So we should know what we have in Congress. We should know what the consequences are of having lacking an organized outside pressure campaign, so the Democratic Party actually feels forced to listen to their constituents as opposed to getting along with their colleagues. It is what it is. This is the system that we have in place right now. This is the lack of power that the progressive left is enjoying as a result of their fragmenting and constant infighting. It is what it is. If we don't have an actual plan to apply pressure persistently and effectively, this is what we're gonna get.
Yeah, and guys, look, honestly, that's why I started Operation Hope. So it's just an effort to collaborate together to create that outside pressure and to come up with good ideas and execute them to do it. In fact, one of the ideas was to interview Ro Khanna and ask him, is it possible? And he told us, yes, it is possible. And so we do get a second shot at this, which is, remember, this is just a stopgap measure for 45 days. In order to pass the actual bill, they still need Democrats very likely, because likely they don't have enough Republican votes because the Freedom Caucus is voting no on everything, right? So if they need Democratic votes, it is super fair, especially if they're gonna get more Democratic votes than Republican votes, to ask for something in return. And in fact, if they have a vote on Kevin McCarthy's speakership, Kevin McCarthy is almost certainly going to require Democratic votes. If that's the case, and they don't ask for a bare minimum vote on paid family leave or another provision or several provisions, then they're nuts. Then that just shows you bad faith on the part of the Democratic Party leadership. That means they don't actually want any of those things. So let's try to create pressure from the outside. We have some allies on the inside, and see if we can actually get something for the country in all of this madness. Because right now, all we have is theater and soap operas. And oh my God, is it gonna shut down or is it not on the next episode of General Hospital? But right now, no one is doing anything for the American people. So it's not too much to ask for one thing for the American people while they have these nonstop nonsense so-called debates, which are nothing but theater.
Well, let's move on to a different angle regarding the government funding bill, because obviously everything kind of happened quickly over the weekend because of the deadline approaching. And Representative Jamal Bowman has been accused of something that Republicans believe he should be expelled for. So let's get to that story.
I was really appalled of watching Democrats' actions today to delay it, to get to a shutdown. But when we found that an individual elected to Congress would pull a fire alarm, that's a new low. We watched how people have been treated if they've done something wrong in this Capitol. It'll be interesting to see how he is treated on what he was trying to obstruct when it came to the American public.
Strong words for progressive Democratic Representative Jamal Bowman coming from Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. This is in regard to Jamal Bowman pulling a fire alarm as the House was set to vote on a stopgap measure to keep the government funded through mid-November. Now, everything happened very quickly over the weekend. We were barreling toward the deadline to fund the government, and Democrats wanted to be able to read the legislation before signing on to it. And so they were trying to stall. So that environment kind of led to the allegations that Representative Bowman is facing now. So it was later determined through a photo that was released that Representative Jamal Bowman had in fact triggered that alarm. Let me give you more details about it. Well, first off, that's the photo that was released by Republicans. They did not release any footage, which I think is a little weird and questionable. I think it would have been a lot more illuminating if we had footage of what happened. How long was he standing there? Now, the reason why I say that is because of what Jamal Bowman claims happened and how that conflicts with the Republican Party's interpretation of what happened. According to the New York Times, Bowman pulled a fire alarm in the House Cannon office building, prompting an evacuation of the building and investigations by the Capitol Police and the House Administration Committee. Now, the alarm was triggered at the same time that House Democrats at the Capitol we're stalling a vote on a spending measure to keep the government operating for another 45 days. Speaker McCarthy had unveiled the bill just minutes earlier, and Democrats were scrambling to read the bill and determine whether to support it. I just love how dysfunctional our government is, right? They just dilly-dally until the last minute, okay? They play games until the last minute. And then there's a piece of legislation that members of Congress feel pressured to vote in favor of before they can even freaking read it. I think that dysfunction is more infuriating than what Jamal Bowman is being accused of here. I'm just gonna keep it real. Now, later in the day, that bill did in fact pass 335 to 91, with more Democrats voting in favor of it than Republicans, even though Republicans dominate the House of Representatives. Now, Bowman said that he had not pulled the alarm on purpose to delay the vote, as some Republicans have claimed. He said that he was actually rushing to the Capitol to cast a vote, and he came to a door in the Cannon building that would not open. He said, quote, "I am embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it would open the door. I regret this and sincerely apologize for any confusion this caused, but I want to be very clear. This was not me in any way trying to delay any vote. It was the exact opposite. I was trying urgently to get to a vote." Now, he added that he met with the Sergeant at Arms and Capitol Police after the incident at their request to explain what had happened. And I want to provide one other thing. So apparently there was a sign there that he found confusing, okay? So let's take a look at the next graphic. And Matt Brunig explains what transpired allegedly. So the sign specifically reads, "Emergency exit only. Push until alarm sounds, 3 seconds. Door will unlock in 30 seconds. And Brunig says that Bowman was trying to walk from the Cannon building to the Capitol building to vote. Unusually, the Cannon exit he went to wouldn't open and had this confusing sign on it. He thought it was saying you had to press the alarm to get out. This all makes sense. What am I missing?" But Jake Tapper, while speaking to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over the weekend, made it clear that he ain't buying it. And I gotta be honest, AOC's defense of Bowman wasn't really all that aggressive. Let's watch.
Interesting moment over the weekend when your New York colleague, Congressman Jamal Bowman, and he's under investigation for this now after Capitol Police say he pulled a fire alarm in one of the House office buildings. Democrats were trying to delay a vote, a final vote on the bill. There he is pulling the fire alarm. He says it was an accident. He thought pulling the alarm would open a door based on the fact that the doors to his right there were locked, and there was a sign that he said he was, I think someone said it was confusing. I'll be honest, it doesn't really make sense to me, his explanation. Have you talked to him? What's going on?
I mean, listen, I think if you actually do see some of the photos of the signs, I think there's something to be said about the government's about to shut down. There's a vote clock that's going down. The exits that are normally open in that building were suddenly closed.
So you pulled the fire alarm?
So what I am here to say is that House administration and US Capitol Police and Jamal Bowman are an active, and he's fully participating in saying there was a misunderstanding.
So that was her defense, but clearly Jake Tapper isn't buying the explanation, and neither are opportunistic House Republicans who are using this as an opportunity to call for the expulsion of Representative Bowman. Here's a little taste of what they've been saying.
This is while an official proceeding is happening on the House floor. Well, let's talk about what that is. That's violating a law. That is the exact same law that January 6 defendants are being prosecuted by the Department of Justice every single day. They're rotting in jail every single day, and that is exactly what happened.
This is the same standard that the people from January 6 were held with. I want him to be held at the same standard. As a member of this body, I call for immediate consideration for everyone to look serious into his actions, and that he be held at the full extent of the law.
And I don't think that we should play the two-tier justice system where we're going to go ahead and throw our J6 guys under the bus whenever they came into the Capitol when they committed no violent crime, but yet we're going to let this guy obstruct federal process and just get away with it.
It was during an official proceeding. That is the same thing that they've gone after, those individuals who walked into the Capitol on January 6th. You have to have an equal distribution of justice.
He's a Democrat, radical left lunatic, and he should be prosecuted the same exact way as the J6 people were prosecuted. Bowman went and he pulled an alarm, and you could add riots, you could add everything else, and he did it during a vote. and he should be treated the same exact way. And we'll see what happens, because a lot of people are saying, what are you going to do about J6? I don't think they're going to be disappointed, I can tell you that.
I mean, is Donald Trump even alive or breathing if he's not trying to sell tumblers or some other Trump campaign merchandise? Anyway, these are not serious people, and I'm so sick of the circus. Cenk, I gotta be honest, I don't care about this story at all, okay? I don't care if he did it on purpose or if it was an accident. It might have been an accident. If it was an accident, like, just read the signs a little more carefully. Who cares?
Yeah, I got you. But once the Republicans attack, you are either going to not defend, right? And then Jamal Bowman's going to look to be compared to guys pulling off a coup against the American government 24/7 on television, all over television, or you're going to defend him and then you're in the middle of the circus. So we don't have a choice.
Cenk, we're looking at footage of January 6th. I think it's the same thing. Look at that footage.
Yeah,
same thing. Same thing.
Yeah. Okay. So look, if you can't tell that it's not, pulling a fire alarm is not the same thing as a giant riot involving thousands of people where they were chanting "Hang Mike Pence" and they were trying to do a coup against the American government with a fake elector scheme, etc. Well, you have cognitive difficulties, and nothing I say will make a difference to you because you don't even understand words. So if you're that deeply biased, be gone, okay? But for the rest of you, I'm gonna defend Jamal Bowman on the actual charge. When I first saw this, I thought to myself, I didn't know the defense at all. And I thought, man, that is awfully strange. Why the hell did he do that? And I was really frustrated in my mind because I couldn't think of any reason why you'd pull the fire alarm. And then I thought, he was a principal. Is this some sort of thing about, like, in a school, kids pull fire alarms if you're in an emergency? Did he think that? Then I read the explanation, and the explanation makes perfect sense. So put up that picture again, okay? So, and this is exactly the type of mistake I'd make, and you guys can judge me for it if you like to. So he gets to a door which normally opens for members like him. He's late to getting to a vote. He's trying to figure it out, and he reads the sign: emergency exit only. Push until alarm sounds. 3 seconds. It makes it sound like, don't worry, the alarm's only gonna sound for 3 seconds. Then door will unlock in 30 seconds. It's an instruction manual on what to do with the alarm so that the door opens. At a bare minimum, the world's worst sign. The dumbest, craziest sign I've ever seen, right? So you could say, hey, Cenk, you're a knucklehead. That doesn't mean pull the fire alarm. I don't know which alarm it's referring to. Okay, fine, guilty as charged. That I'm telling you right now, I probably would have done the same thing. And so, is it embarrassing? It's super embarrassing. Because if you think about it for a second, yeah, it's a fire alarm. Of course, don't pull the fire alarm. What alarm are they talking about? Why isn't this door working? But he's rushing to the vote. So guys, we're gonna have definitive evidence, and the Capitol Police should release this video because they've only released a picture, right? So show us a video. If he goes and he just pulls the fire alarm, then I'm wrong. No, he meant to pull the fire alarm, etc. If he's looking around, reading a sign, looking confused, and then pulls the fire alarm, then you'll know that he was telling the truth. So release the video and let's be done with this insanity. But Anna, what drives me crazy is everything in politics is marketing. So the minute they start attacking and doing this insane false equivalency, it forces us into this conversation. So we're in one nonsense conversation after another, because Republicans scream from the rooftops with insanity every day and make people believe it, and the Democrats usually whimper in return. By the way, another giant difference between Jamal Bowman, I mean, I can't believe I'm even entertaining this, but he's working with Capitol Police and Sergeant at Arms as we speak right now, and he did from minute one. If you were looking to do anything that was amiss, you're not going to be looking to work with the authorities to get a conclusion on this matter. But hey, if you want to be biased and you want to attack Bowman, you were going to do that anyway, no matter what he did. Keep it real.
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised that some members of the Republican Party are grasping at straws to paint a picture of Democrats that makes it appear as though they engage in the same type of criminality that some Republican lawmakers have engaged in, especially when it comes to attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Maybe not criminality, but certainly bad behavior, the willingness to reject the results of the 2020 election, the fact that they endlessly provide cover for Trump's alleged crimes day in and day out. I mean, George Santos wants to open his mouth about wrongdoing and bad behavior. That criminal, that guy? Yeah, how about you shut up, sit down, and have some freaking decency. Get yourself a decent suit if you're gonna be a sitting member of the House of Representatives, a position that he does not deserve as someone who lied to the American people, lied to his constituents, and is a complete and utter fraudster. Disgusting. Anyway.
Yeah, so Anna, look, I thought the same thing about George Santos. I'm like, man, this guy's got some nerve. And like acting as if he's outraged. I mean, Republicans, aren't you humiliated by now? This guy committed how many different crimes, lied to you in every conceivable way, and then you're gonna let him pretend that he's outraged by Jamal Bowman making a mistake on an alarm? Get out of here, man. And as I was watching that, I was thinking, that's like the perfect symbol of the theater of American politics.
1000%, 1000%.
Right?
Yep.
Just a total actor. Look, if you're not already convinced, Jonathan Turley, who's now a diehard Trump supporter and Fox News legal analyst, today on Fox News was like expelling him. It's like, that's madness. There's only been 5 members of Congress ever expelled in hundreds of years. And he's like, over a fire alarm? He's like, well, then everybody's gonna get expelled and there'll be no end to this. And so even diehard Trump supporters are like, can you guys please cut the crap and move on, please?
All right, that does it for our first hour, but stick around for the second hour if you want to watch my head explode, because we have a story involving Gavin Newsom, and I will provide yet another example for why I believe he is a massive load of garbage. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
Now I'm gonna do something very different here and read some 1-star reviews of the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Donnie Franchise said, pretty much it's like listening to a trash compactor. Someone else said, negative, anti-American propaganda. And others said, out of context, misquotes, typical leftists who are afraid to debate, just smear. These two would be perfect for CNN or MSLSD. Well, Donnie, you might have a point, because I feel like a trash compactor right now after taking in all those garbage reviews. But thanks for listening anyway. We are, in fact, unapologetically progressive. And if you're not ready for bold commentary, then we're not the show for you. On the Young Turks, we speak up about the issues that matter, and we want to make positive change happen. And now here's why we actually do the show. Mariel Morales said, found this podcast from the True Crime Podcast, Fruit Loops, and other great progressive podcasts. I've become an instant fan of the Young Turks. Great conversation, great takes, very well composed, factual podcast, very informative. Love to hear that. Zed55 said, it's a joy to experience such awareness and intelligence from fascinating people. And Anna is gorgeous and brilliant. Apparently I'm just fascinating, but I'll take it. Paul for Progress said, news well delivered. Appreciate it. KOOK said, Democrats and Republicans are fair game for TYT. And if Anna or Cenk provide disinformation about anything, they will admit they made a mistake and correct it. We appreciate you noticing that we are honest. To people who actually listen to the substance of the show, thank you. Your listenership supports what we do. Leave a 5-star rating for the Young Turks on Apple Podcasts. Let's take the ratings back from the trolls. Everywhere you look, things are getting more expensive. Here at TYT, we understand this. That's why we're not gonna price gouge you or use inflation as an excuse to raise our prices. A TYT membership is not your typical subscription, but basic membership is still just $4.99. So what do you get for that price? For starters, you're getting exclusive programming, unique, exclusive designs from Shop TYT, access to a members-only chat, giveaways, emojis, and so many other amazing perks. But most importantly, you're helping to make an impact. As a TYT member, you not only help us do the shows every day, but you drive real positive change in the process. In 2017, we helped to start Justice Democrats right here on TYT. That's a group that got a dozen progressives elected into Congress. That's amazing, you did that. Your support also funds TYT's very own investigative reporting. Just recently, our reporters exposed the Fellowship Foundation and pressured lawmakers into boycotting that bigoted event. Isn't that amazing? We raised over $30,000 for Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered clean water to thousands of people in need. Our petitions, polls, and community of activists help keep the corruption of Washington in check. That's the impact of what just $4.99 a month from our members can do. And we're just getting started. Positive change doesn't occur overnight, but with your contribution, we can make it happen together.
You don't see a lot of news coverage in the mainstream media of the peaceful Black Lives Matter protests that happened throughout the country.
Black Americans are hurting. Minorities in this country are hurting.
We always talk about starting from the bottom up, but the problem is the bottom up is always the least amount of power. No one cares about them, and until someone actually cares about them, then we'll do something about it.
Please, for God's sake, America, understand, acknowledge, and work towards getting to a new reality where Black lives actually matter.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Hildegard's Goat and Zcal's Decals, which is kind of a fun name. They just hit the join button below the video and became American Heroes and Young Turks members. And speaking of American Heroes, Laurel Dragon gifted 5 memberships. Thank you for looking out for others. Anna, what's next?
Big news out of California following the passing of Senator Dianne Feinstein. Let's get to it. California Governor Gavin Newsom has selected Emily's List president and current Maryland resident LaFonza Butler to replace Senator Dianne Feinstein's Senate seat in the state of California. Now, while he fulfilled his promise to appoint a black woman, picking someone who doesn't even live in the hellhole conditions that he created in this state is a pretty good example of how much of a degenerate piece of crap he is. But let me give you more details about Gavin Newsom's pick here. So who is this woman? Well, Butler has never held elected office, but has a long track record in California politics. Now, she served as a senior advisor to Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign, but she also worked as a labor leader. Sounds good, right? And was part of the $15 an hour minimum wage fight in California. But there's massive caveats to that, which we'll get to in just a moment. So please hold before you judge her positively. Now, she was for many years the head of SEIU Local 2015, a union representing California long-term caregivers, before becoming a partner in what was then known as SCRB Strategies, Newsom's political consulting firm, and later working in public policy for Airbnb. How sweet. Now, bit of a conflict of interest, if I do say so myself, but who cares? I mean, anything to avoid having to appoint a progressive like Barbara Lee in that Senate seat, right? Now, despite her union credentials, some workers feel that she later turned her back on them when she decided to lobby on behalf of Uber. And so here's UC Davis lecturer and journalist Sasha Abramsky explaining that in a little more detail.
On the one hand, she was a union leader, represented home health care workers for the SEIU in California. More recently, of course, an advisor to Kamala Harris, the vice president, and advised Uber as it fought the California law requiring app companies to grant workers employee benefits.
You're right. She has a very progressive track record with the SEIU, which is one of the better and most progressive unions in California, extremely effective. And yet at the same time, as you said, she's been on the wrong side of this issue with Uber. And California has had a whole bunch of labor disputes, it's had a whole bunch of legislation around labor, and it's had this initiative that was trying to essentially treat Uber drivers and Lyft drivers as employees, which they are. They should get benefits, they should get paid sick time, they should get health care, they should get retirement, and they don't. And she's lobbied very hard on the side of Uber against that policy change.
Just to give you more details on that, on her relationship with Uber and what she did on their behalf. During Butler's time at SCRB Strategies, the firm was tapped by Uber to help defeat efforts to allow drivers to win legal status to make them eligible for the minimum wage and to join labor unions. Lobbying disclosures show Uber paid the firm over $185,000. I mean, that's not that much money to basically sell out workers in the state of California. But there's more. There's more. This is my favorite detail that most reporting left out, with the exception of Lee Fong. Okay, please follow his Substack, he's doing great work. PG&E also retained SCRB Strategies at a time when the utility firm was battling state regulators over upgrades necessary to prevent wildfires and the fallout over a gas explosion that killed 8 and injured 58 residents in San Bruno, California. The company paid Butler's firm $1.1 million, records show. Now, PG&E's unwillingness to upgrade and update their equipment also led to the Camp Fire, which killed people, which destroyed the entire community. So she worked on behalf of PG&E to prevent PG&E from having to follow regulations and upgrade their equipment to avoid those types of wildfires. That's who she is. So congratulations, California. Congratulations, the United States of America. Gavin Newsom promised that he would appoint a black woman, and that's all that matters, right? She's a black woman. Who cares about what she's done in her history? Who cares about what her record indicates? Just anything to avoid appointing a progressive, anything. Cenk, I don't know, am I being unfair here?
No, in fact, I think that this is kind of a perfect symbol of what's wrong with democratic politics in America today. So she checks off all of the identity politics boxes. As Gavin Newsom promised, it's a black woman, okay. And she's also happens to be part of the LGBTQ community, she's lesbian. So great, what else do you need, Democrats tell you? Substance, that's what we need. And by the way, the substance is not just to help everyone, but it's also to help black people, women, people in the LGBTQ community. We care about the policies, we care about the substance a lot more than we care about boxes that you checked off. So, I mean, it wouldn't have helped me if you had gotten us, Ben Carson, hey, he's African American, we checked off a box. No, that's not what we're looking for here. So, and who is she? Well, that's the other side of why this is the perfect symbol of the Democratic Party today. So she starts out as a progressive and in favor of labor, which is actually quite common for a lot of the Democrats. They come in, not all of them, but a lot of them come in kind of a little bit idealistic and happy to help people, et cetera, and then realize, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'd rather get paid. And so I'm gonna go work for corporate Democrats and then flat out corporations. And I'm going to be a political consultant and a political mover and shaker. And I'm going to help them, bury the problems of real Americans and the real people of California. And so I'm going to help Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom do this. And then I'm going to help the donors of Gavin Newsom, like PG&E, to help bury those problems. And Gavin Newsom then makes those problems go away as governor. So we have all the fires, we have all the problems, we have none of the substance. But don't worry, the theater was played perfectly. And now you have someone who looks like they represent you without actually representing you.
I cannot emphasize enough how much of a disaster Gavin Newsom is. You guys have to believe me. I know that for those who don't live in California, you look at him and his slicked back hair and you think, oh, he's so youthful. He's so energetic. I watched him do these interviews. He's gonna debate Governor Ron DeSantis. California is an S show right now. The fact that I can't curse as I talk about this story also makes my head want to explode. Because if you don't live here, you don't know it, you're not experiencing it. He is slimy as can be, does not care about the people of this state, and certainly would not give a damn about the people of this country should he ever run for president and, God forbid, get the nomination by the Democratic Party. Please wake yourselves up to the reality that California has been dealing with in the face of this terrible leader and this terrible governor. Okay, really important for you guys to do your homework before you start cheerleading Gavin Newsom's presidential run. With that said, more details about his appointment here. Now, he said that he was going to appoint a caretaker, someone who would serve as senator until the election happens, someone that would not run for the Senate seat. But it appears that those conditions have melted away. And so if she wants to run for the Senate seat, she would have the ability to do so. And as recently as yesterday, the Congressional Black Caucus was urging Newsom to appoint Barbara Lee instead, which is surprising because the Congressional Black Caucus ain't about the progressives. They're really not. But in this case, they're like, what about Barbara Lee? So let me read you what they had to say about it. In a letter to Newsom earlier Sunday, Congressional Black Caucus Chair Stephen Horsford, a Democrat from Nevada, urged Newsom to appoint Lee to fill the vacant US Senate seat, arguing that her unparalleled legislative record, longstanding leadership in the Democratic Party, and deep commitment to justice and equality cannot be equaled. And by the way, she lives in Maryland. She lives in Maryland, but Newsom says, don't worry, she owns a home in California. Does that make you feel better, Cenk, that she owns a home in California?
Yeah, well, look, I know this hypocrisy on a very personal level. So when I ran for Congress in California, Newsom was among the people who thought, he lives outside the district, so it's unimaginable that he could serve as the congressman from the 25th district. She doesn't even live in the state. She lives, I live right outside the 25th congressional district, right? She lives across the country. This is a joke. This is just saying, we don't want to put in Barbara Lee because Barbara Lee's a progressive and she might win if she has the seat. And we just don't want her to win. She will not play ball. She will not give corporations whatever they want like we all do. And by the way, like Bernie Sanders, the fact that she's honest might actually embarrass the rest of us and make us all look bad. So no, I was just like, keep it real. Gavin Newsom didn't think he had to appoint anybody to this seat, okay?
Yep.
That's why he promised a black woman. It's just the most empty promise of all time. And he knew that they were gonna keep wheeling her into the Senate no matter what. She had very advanced dementia. They didn't care about her at all. Her kids are now fighting over the estate. They must be so proud. And they were gonna wheel her in until the very last day, and they did. And they're like, oh, damn it, she died. Why, because they care about her? If they cared about her, they wouldn't have put her in the state in the first place, right? No, they cared about her because it was just a way to keep a progressive out of that seat. So look, credit to the Congressional Black Caucus. I get it, Barbara Lee is one of their own, and she's one of the longest serving members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And yes, they've been vicious to progressives in the past, but there are a lot of progressives now in the Congressional Black Caucus. And this was a relatively easy thing to appease progressives within the Congressional Black Caucus. But despite all of that, you do the right thing, you get the credit. Credit where credit is due. So thank you, Congressional Black Caucus, for doing the right thing, for fighting for the right thing. And they, to this moment, they're like, no, not good enough. It has to be Barbara Lee. So we'll see how it ends up, but we'll see how it ends up. We know how it's gonna end up. Newsom's gonna go with Butler, and that's that. And by the way, she worked at Emily's List, and that sounds really amazing and wonderful because we all care about women's rights, reproductive rights. Except what you might not know is that Emily's List is often used by establishment Democrats to funnel money of the donors to more corporate Democrats in primaries against progressives. When we first launched Just Democrats, Emily's List was the original Democratic majority for Israel. They're the ones that would spend all the money against progressives to make sure that they were defeated in primaries. So that's I mean, it goes beyond saying, hell no, I'll never put a progressive in that seat. I'll take a corporate consultant in that seat. It goes further by, basically slapping progressives in the face and saying, oh, the person that helped defeat you guys all, I'm gonna put that person in instead of the progressive that made sense in this case.
Well, look, Cenk, I'm willing to overlook that, turn the other cheek, because Emily's List has done such a great job in maintaining and protecting women's reproductive rights in this country. So we'll end on that and take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about an influencer who was arrested for encouraging looters to loot several stores in Philadelphia across the city. We've got that story and more, don't miss it.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to YouTube Super Chat now. Lifetime Supplier Dragon says, do not forget Gavin's veto of a bill that would have given striking actors unemployment benefits. Trust me, Anna has not forgotten.
We went very long with that story. We were gonna briefly talk about that as well. But I think on Wednesday, I'm gonna do a deep dive on Gavin Newsom so you guys understand the disdain I have for him. But for now, let's just forget about this story because it's putting me in a rage that is unhealthy for the show and probably unhealthy for my heart. So go ahead, Jake.
Okay, Anna's a little bit like the North. She remembers. Brian Tarver, thank you for the donation. We appreciate your brother. Same with all these other wonderful folks like I am losing the SFL and Tribal Woman. You guys are great. Chaplain Fred wrote in, hi Anna and Cenk, would you be interested in promoting your book and signing in Pasadena? It's a conservative bookstore, but open-minded, just asking. Yeah, Chaplain Fred, we're gonna look into that. Now there's some chance that we'll do a different bookstore in LA as well, but since it's easy, relatively easy, I think I'll almost certainly come by. You're wonderful for offering. Samantha Toto writes in, Cenk, I loved your interview with Ro Khanna. That was the most productive conversation I've heard in a long time. Love that you asked him to introduce a bill to pause wages for Congress should they close the government. No problem, that's what we do. We try to stick up for you, and you got to give Ro Khanna all the credit in the world. He constantly is trying. I mean, when you say get caught trying, the one guy I think in Congress is Ro Khanna. Me being 24 writes in with a couple of critical comments. Populism died when Bernie lost. They write in, we should be working to make the right irrelevant. You should garner and coalesce the new voters. You're too late. I assume you're too late is referring to the campaign that I'm presidential campaign that I might run. And no, populism is not dead with Bernie. Fetterman won in a populist campaign even after a stroke. Populism is raging in the country. And read Justice is Coming, you'll see why a progressive populist is almost certainly gonna win, certainly by 2008. In terms of whether I'm too late, no, it's very close. That's why I'm forced into a decision as quickly as possible. And so should all the other governors who need to get in this race. But don't worry, they won't change the rules for me. But if any of the Democratic governors get in the race, they'll change the rules and make sure that it's not too late instantly. Danbert No Bacon wrote in, as a fellow naturalized citizen, go Cenk 2024, shake up the primary and show them that the country in the future is progressive. Thank you, brother, I appreciate you. There are 25 million naturalized citizens. Yes, you can run for president. The Supreme Court's pretty clear on it. We can make them crystal clear on it. And don't believe the conventional wisdom. Moondragon writes, just Cenk for president and was very generous. You're awesome, thank you Moondragon, we appreciate you. Vince Doherty also contributed, we appreciate you. Jesse wrote in, Anna for president, I would vote for Cenk, but you were born in the US. Look, like I just said, I'm not sure that that's important, but that being said, Anna for president does make a lot of sense. But that's for another day. Me being me24 wrote another critical comment. This is Cenk being brittled that the progressives he bashed aren't doing what he wants in reference to the stopgap story. What do you mean? The progressives like Ro Khanna did exactly what we asked them to do. Doesn't make it. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Stephanie Dalidinas. Stephanie, thanks for joining. We appreciate you. Anna.
All right. Philly went through quite a bit over the weekend, and now an influencer has been arrested as a result of some of what transpired. Let's talk about it. A popular social media influencer who is not the person you see in the images next to me, named Deja Blackwell, also known as Meatball online, was arrested after live streaming a crowd of people looting stores in Philadelphia's city center last week. Now, her lawyer is accusing people who are criticizing her of being racist. So before we get to the lawyer's claims, let's get to what happened with the looting, how this woman was arrested and why she was arrested, and then you can judge for yourselves. Now, what happened? So groups of looters hit multiple locations in Philadelphia, including an Apple store, 18 state liquor stores, pharmacies, Lululemon, and more. Authorities ended up arresting 52 individuals, and they even recovered an illegal gun. 3 of those arrested happened to be teenagers. The looting took place over a span of 8 hours. And while I mentioned city center, it started in city center and then expanded to other neighborhoods, including Northeast Philly and West Philly. Now, here's an example, just so you see with your own eyes, what the scenes looked like as the looting took place. Now, the woman you hear yelling free iPhones and kind of laughing off what's happening is Deja Blackwell. At one point, she's heard saying, "Tell the police they either lock me up tonight or it's going to get lit. It's going to be a movie." Well, Meatball, you said it. You got arrested. And now she and her lawyer are crying about it. She could also be seen walking with the crowd as they moved from one store to another. So Deja Blackwell has been charged. She was arrested, as I mentioned. What are the charges? Burglary, conspiracy, criminal trespass, riot, criminal mischief, criminal use of communication facility, receipt of stolen property, and disorderly conduct. The 21-year-old was later bailed out by her mother. That happened early Thursday morning. Unsurprisingly, the influencer with close to 650,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok got some blowback. Luckily, her followers were really not appreciative of her involvement in this. And now Blackwell's lawyer is accusing those criticizing her of racism. Because had that person been white or Latino or Muslim, I mean, the commentary would be different, right? Except it wouldn't. I don't think it would be. The idea that she is now facing criticism and prosecution simply because she happens to be a black woman is ridiculous, and yet another example of providing cover for illegal behavior, bad behavior, by using and weaponizing race. And it's disgusting. It's disgusting when it happens, and I'm sick of it. So let me give you what her lawyer had to say. Her name's Jessica Mann, managing attorney at Shaka Johnson. It sickens me to witness the media's complicity in what can only be described as an all-out assault on black and brown people, as their character and actions are mercilessly vilified. Can you guys cue up the video again, please? We're gonna watch it again. I'm gonna read that quote again, and then we're gonna go to the video again. Let's read the quote again. Jessica Mann is quoted as saying, "It sickens me to witness the media's complicity in what can only be described as an all-out assault on black and brown people, as their character and actions are mercilessly vilified." Now let's take a look at the character and actions of Meatball. Let's watch.
Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Everybody must eat. Yes, everybody must eat. Free apples. Free apples. Free apples. Look, security running. Oh, what's up?
Now, mind you, the media didn't post that video all over the internet. Meatball posted that video all over the internet. So was Meatball vilifying herself? I would say so. By the way, the lawyer Mann also argued that the media should have focused on how Blackwell was doing nothing more than capturing the raw reality of public outrage when she streamed the events on September 26th. Now, what she's referring to is, the context is a case involving a police shooting. The police officer killed a 27-year-old man by the name of Eddie Irizarry during a traffic stop last month. The police initially said that Irizarry had lunged at the officers while outside of his vehicle, but later admitted that that actually wasn't the case. His family has now filed a wrongful death lawsuit. Blackwell did refer to Eddie at least twice during her live stream, so I want to give you the full context of that. I also want to tell you, I don't care, okay? You don't respond to injustice by looting 18 liquor stores and an Apple store. Okay, and by the way, there were peaceful protests in regard to that situation. And those peaceful protests were not in any way tied to the looters who decided to, exploit the situation in order to engage in the criminality that you just watched. And the reason why I'm so angry about this at this point is because honestly, our side of the political aisle loves to provide cover for it, and I find it gross, and I'm done doing it. I'm done trying to be understanding toward that perspective. I'm not understanding anymore. It is destroying communities. It is mostly victimizing majority black and brown communities. Stores are shutting down, people are losing their jobs, and then you have these wannabe revolutionaries streaming day in and day out, providing cover for this garbage. I'm not into it. It's stupid, and I'm glad she got arrested. Great. Cenk, what do you think?
So when you say to the cops, come and arrest me, and then they come and arrest you, I don't think you get to complain at that point. So you couldn't have been any clearer. Okay, I actually think that when they overuse racism like this, and they say someone who's on tape saying, everybody get free iPhones, everybody go in and break in, you're only targeting her because she's black and you're racist. Well, that's the boy who cried wolf, and it does great damage to the cause of actually fighting against racism. And it itself is a little bit racist, because oftentimes you'll hear people, and I get it, this is a defense attorney, he's trying to make a case for someone who's on tape and indefensible. But it's a cheap, terrible way to make that case, because it hurts the rest of the black community and all people of color, because they say, oh, you're prosecuting this criminal, and that's because you hate black people. No, wait a minute. Black people have been targeted in this country by prosecution a lot of times when they did not deserve it. And we've covered those cases hundreds of times here, right? But when you just defend all criminals and say it's because they're black, you're almost saying that, oh, right, like that somehow black people do this, and hence if you prosecute a criminal, you're prosecuting black people. No, you're not prosecuting all black people, you're prosecuting that black person. by the way, in an effort to protect the rest of the community who happens to be black and brown. Look, Dr. Martin Luther King said that riots are the voice of the unheard. And there's a lot of truth to that. And in the 1960s, people were genuinely outraged. After George Floyd, a lot of people were genuinely outraged. And it has happened throughout American history, right? And so as it's painful to see the fires, et cetera, and the damage that's caused, there's a part of you that understands the rage and what led to it, especially after a massive injustice, right? But looting is not the voice of the unheard. First of all, we just heard you. You were on tape. You were very loud and clear. And you're talking about everybody's got to eat, everybody's got to eat. And you're like super proud about all the looting going on. What part of the unheard is about stealing iPhones?
Right, it's actually the voice of opportunists and scumbags. That's what it's the voice of. Let's just keep it real.
And when you take like significant rage that comes with the injustice that has been visited upon black people in this country, and then you use it to steal iPhones and then make excuses where you hide behind the color of your skin, that is not at all helpful to the cause. So no, and guys, do not think that a defense attorney for this particular person, or maybe a couple of loud voices, which I haven't even heard yet, online, represents the whole community. There's no way in the world. Look, and it's deeply insulting to people of color. They also have eyes and ears. They just saw her on tape, okay? And she doesn't represent all black people. That's insane. Those looters do not represent all black people. That's insane, okay? So they took advantage of a situation. They shouldn't have done that. And then she had the audacity to basically rub it in everybody's face. And I'm not shedding one tear that she got arrested for something that was obviously criminal, so much so that she bragged about it and asked the cops to arrest her.
Now, a few final details on this. Philadelphia's interim police commissioner, John Stanford, accused Blackwell of leading a caravan of looters from store to store, as well as committing burglaries herself and encouraging others to commit burglaries. Now, as I mentioned, she was arrested, so she did spend some time in jail before her mother bailed her out. And so later, she posted on social media about it and said, "I've never been through nothing like that in my life. What happened? I need some sleep. I'm scared, I'm traumatized, never again in my life." You know what's also traumatizing? Working in one of those stores that's getting looted by a giant group of people who have no concern for anyone inside the store, no concern for the workers. As I mentioned, one of the individuals had a gun on them. Luckily, no one was actually hurt as a result of that. But she also told local reporters that she never wants to go back to jail. She said, quote, "I just prefer, never loot again, stay out of trouble." So apparently, serving a little bit of time behind bars does serve as a deterrent for some. And I certainly hope that's the case for Meatball. Any final words, Cenk?
She's almost doing an ad for law enforcement. Law enforcement works. People love to brag and we're stealing stuff and it's so much fun. And then all of a sudden they spend a little bit of time in jail, and it turns out, for some people at least, that this scares them straight a little bit. And then all of a sudden she's like talking about never again, and I'm not gonna loot. Good, that's how it's supposed to work. And you're not supposed to brag about committing crimes on tape. And guys, this is not just guys, it bothers me deeply that they made this about race when it's about criminality. And I hate that those two things are now getting intermingled when they have no business being intermingled. Okay, but on top of that, this is also about our sick need for fame. In the past, people would know not to brag about crimes. Now people do it all the time because they gotta get more famous. But by the way, if you think at the end of the day that this is gonna be bad for Meatball, I'm not sure that that's the case. She's gonna get fame that she didn't have before. And at the end of the day, she might think that it was a win. And that's deeply disturbing.
All right, we've got Trump's rant about California and its water crisis when we come back.
Okay, guys, hang around for a second. We're going to do a book reading. I'm going to read you a couple of interesting parts of the book right after the show, live and free to everyone. So don't leave during the break. We'll be right back, and I'll do the book reading for you guys. But I also have something really important to tell you guys. You can actually win $50,000, and it's for a great cause. And this is so winnable, guys. If you know any video editing, this is like the most winnable $50,000 of your life. CancelSuperPACs.com is asking for people to make an easily understandable video that explains the corrupting influence of super PACs. They explain it all to you on the website, CancelSuperPACs.com. And if you make the best video, you're gonna win $50,000. So especially if you know video editing, go to CancelSuperPACs.com. You can make a great, short, little entertaining video and win $50,000. Please go participate. Professor Larry Lessig's involved in that effort, and he's one of the great godfathers of the get money out of politics movement. Now let me go to YouTube members. Jonathan Borisjani wrote in, Cenk Uygur 2024, no one believed in Bernie, he proved them wrong. Could Cenk get the same treatment/success? I'd love to see Cenk at a debate, so would anyone who likes ratings. Justice with Cenk. Look, me in a Democratic debate would be a treat. That would be amazing. So a long way to get there, but thank you for your faith in me. Let's see, I'm still considering, we're not sure, but I am leaning in that direction. So let's see what happens. I appreciate you, brother. Eris 385 says, just bought the audiobook version as well. Looking forward to hearing Cenk's voice read this book. Thank you, Eris. TYT.com/justice, by the way, to buy the book. Jonathan wrote back in with a slogan for me, not me, you, grr, Cenk 2024. Okay, it's a start. It's a start. Yeah, having fun already. Norris Davidson said jury trial could cost millions and millions of dollars for legal fees, since it would take forever to select a jury. If they figured they would lose anyway, bench trial is cheaper. As a possible reason for why Donald Trump chose not to have a jury trial, the number one, he shouldn't complain about not having a jury trial. But second of all, it also would drag it out so that he might get past the presidential election. So I'm surprised. I would be surprised if he made that decision actively. Michael Malbon wrote in about that same story. MAGA stands for making attorneys get attorneys. Also true. Christy North Dragon Weber wrote in, as a mom of boys, thus sensitive to boys' feelings, hearing Cenk say he may run and then hearing him about the New York Times sub makes me anxious because elections are so vicious. I don't want to see him hurt or embarrassed. I know that's ridiculous, but the media is going to treat him like dirt and it's going to hurt his feelings. I don't think I can take it. Chrissy, I got you. And they did it last time. I've braced for impact. Yes, they will shred me. I don't mind. We've got to at least fight for you. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, lovable linguist, James Ramsey, KW, all with you on the Young Turks tonight. Casper.
Well, Trump was in California ranting about the water crisis. Let's hear what he had to say.
But they don't want the water to come down all the way to Los Angeles and the Central Valley, where we're constantly forced to ration. You have droughts. We're rich people in Beverly Hills. We don't feel so sorry for them, but I do actually. You know, they pay millions of dollars in taxes. They're taking a shower. They're told to hurry up. You're only allowed a small amount of water when they take a shower. That's why rich people from Beverly Hills, generally speaking, don't smell so good, you know. Typically, you ever notice they're not great? Their hygiene is not good, but it's forced to be that way.
On Friday, former President Donald Trump spoke at the California GOP convention and went off on a rather lengthy tangent regarding the water crisis in the state of California. Now, that has been alleviated somewhat as a result of heavy rains this year, but nonetheless, Trump had a lot to say. Let's watch.
So now in Los Angeles, when you have a new home, you have faucets, washing machines, dishwashers, all of the things, but very little water is allowed to come out. Like, as an example, I stayed in one of those houses and they had a shower head. And I want to really work hard on my hair and I don't want to take it. And I turn on the water. I thought the pipes were broken. They said no. They call it a restrictor. They have restrictors in the thing, so no water comes out. So I'm standing outside, drip, drip.
True. But honestly, true. Not entirely true. I'm gonna debunk a little bit of what he just said in just a moment. But Cenk, listen, his energy and his ability to essentially get that entire, look, I know it's the GOP, the Republican, supporters in that audience. So of course they're gonna love him, they're gonna laugh. But are we really gonna pretend like he's not entertaining while he gives these speeches completely off the cuff?
Yeah, no, but he's entertaining like Ronald McDonald. Although to be fair, Ronald McDonald has always been creepy. So like I get it. You watch him, it's hard not to laugh, right? But I'm laughing at him. I mean,
are you? I mean, what he said there was true.
No. First of all, low water pressure might be true, but most of what he said is not true. He said the people in Beverly Hills all smell.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm not going around sniffing them. Maybe he did, and he noticed something that I never had.
No, it's absurd. It's absurd.
It is. That is absurd. But what he's saying about the water restrictions is not absurd, and the restrictor in the faucets and things like that in the shower heads, that is true. Those restrictors, you literally cannot buy a shower head that does not have the restrictor. And then Californians were getting around it by basically taking the restrictor out. And now there are only certain types of shower heads that can be sold in the state that not only have the restrictor in it, but it does not allow, the way it's designed, it doesn't even allow the flow of water to flow with high pressure, even without the restrictor.
I know, but 98% of what he said about it was nonsense. So the restrictor thing is true, and we're the fairest show in America, and we tell you that. But he talked about how California is letting all the rainwater go into the Pacific Ocean. That's not true. He talked about how you could,
it does go into the Pacific Ocean.
Yeah, he talked about how California told you not to take showers. That's not true. Just totally made it up. Very standard stuff. By the way, if you're the people who live in that house that hosted him, you should be furious with him. I mean. Well, who else has he met with in Beverly Hills? So I guess he thought that family smelled. Jesus, what a terrible person, right? And so, I mean, yeah, it's funny like Bozo the Clown, but I mean, 98% of what he says is never true.
So there are kernels of truth in what he said, right? So about 25% of our rainwater over the last year did in fact flow into the Pacific Ocean, which is a massive waste of water considering the fact that we keep dealing with these record long droughts. So when we get rain, it's really important that we make the most of it. But our infrastructure in the state of California isn't built to essentially capture all of the rainwater. And as a result, we lose about 25% of it. Now, instead of focusing our resources on building the infrastructure necessary to make do with the rainwater we do get, we are throwing billions away toward this high-speed rail project that has existed for I don't even know how long. It's been around for decades. It is never going to be completed. The terrain that we're dealing with in California makes it impossible for the high-speed rail to come to completion. And so, but it doesn't matter. There are people who make money off of the construction of it, so we're going to keep throwing billions and billions of dollars. While there's no law indicating that Californians needed to take shorter showers, the governor, Newsom, had urged Californians to take shorter showers with the highly restricted water pressure that they're dealing with, which makes it incredibly difficult for, let's say, women to wash the shampoo and conditioner out of their hair. So like, these are frustrations that a lot of people are experiencing. So when he touches on those frustrations, even when he embellishes the stories and makes up this, situation in Beverly Hills, people are willing to put the embellishments aside because they are frustrated with how there are some solutions to a very real problem we have in regard to drought. And those solutions seem to kind of fall by the wayside as our local lawmakers and our governor focus their energies on other nonsense that makes life even worse for Californians.
So the problem is that he states problems loudly, and then people assume that he means the real problems, the ones that you're pointing out, Anna. Excuse me, but he doesn't actually say that. Like, so for example, we were not supposed to water our lawns in the middle of the worst drought that we had. And it was partially not watering lawns, but it wasn't, there was no restriction on showering. But he says that and everybody then believes it. Based on the suggestion that you mentioned, he said that we should dampen the forest in California, and that's the real problem. That's because he doesn't want to address climate change. That's also partly because a lot of his donors are fossil fuel companies. So he's a terrible guy who makes up crazy lunatic stuff all the time. But unfortunately, in politics, everything is marketing. So when he screams loudly and the Democrats whimper, people accidentally believe that maybe he's pointing out problems that he could solve when his solutions make no sense at all. But it would be nice if Democrats also cared about being loud about our actual problems in California or the nation.
1000% agreement on that point, absolutely.
Yes, okay, so guys, we're gonna take a quick break here. When we come back, for everyone, it's not members only, I'm gonna do a book reading for you guys, read a couple of segments of the book that I think might be really compelling for you. To know whether you ever buy the book or not, I want you to at least know these parts. And then I'll take your questions about it as well. So stay right here, and some portion of it is going to be for members. So tyt.com/join or hit the join button below. Today's a good day to become a member and get that extra part of the book reading. But for now, we'll come back and have it freely available to everyone. Stay right here.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday to Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care, I don't believe in it, and I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive Shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real, positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
The media can't stop talking about gridlock in Washington, as if a handful of stubborn Republicans are the only thing standing between us and a fully functional democracy. The reality is that our government was taken over by big business and their allies in both political parties. And corporate media adds to the dysfunction. The good news is that the American people are progressive and soon will take over Washington. My book, Justice is Coming, is our battle plan for making that happen. You can get Justice is Coming wherever books and audiobooks are sold.
All right, guys, I'm going to do a book reading for you guys for Justice is Coming, how progressives are going to take over the country and America is going to love it. But first, I want to thank Sneeros and Justin Blackwalker for joining. They hit the join button below. We appreciate you at TYT. And I'm going to take questions in between the sections of the book that I'm going to read, so you guys can write in wherever you are on TYT.com, on YouTube, it's Twitch, etc. And I noticed something very, very recently, which I don't know if you'll be able to see. I think you will here. You notice how Love It also has lightning underneath it, okay, in the cover? I didn't even realize that. How fun is that? Okay, I don't know if you could see it there. Okay, here you go. There it is. Okay, anyways. And all the other people that wrote in during the show, I always feel bad about all the comments I couldn't get to, the super chats, the member comments, etc. Thank you for all the kind notes about the appearance on the David Pakman show, the great words about the Ro Khanna interview being great. We're gonna run that for you guys tomorrow. It's also gonna be not members only, but a bonus episode for everyone tomorrow to talk about Operation Hope, and we'll replay that Ro Khanna interview for you guys. As well, and for those of you who are worried if I run for president that people are going to come after me and it's going to be pretty brutal, believe me that I know that. I know that very well, and it is definitely going to be brutal. But we'll get to that when we get to it. For now, Justice is here, so it has been released. You can buy it at tyt.com/justice. So let me read you from chapter 2. What is a progressive? This is a section about economic injustice, and I think it's pretty telling. This section has my favorite graph that I've shown you guys on the show many, many times, but I'll read around it. So here we go. Now, let me give you a sense of how devastating the economic injustice in America has been and how much money it has cost you personally. First, the good news. For 30 years, from the late 1940s to the late 1970s, we had economic justice in this country. So it is in fact possible. As the World Economic Forum explains, between 1948 and 1979, the percent growth in productivity and wages were relatively similar, with an increase of 108% and 93% respectively. That means as you worked harder, your wages went up. That's exactly how it's supposed to be. That's what justice looks like. And we had it here in the United States for a long time, but then something changed drastically. In chapter 4, I'm going to explain what that change was, the beginning of corporate rule. And I'm going to show you exactly how and why that change happened. For now, let me show you the horrible injustice that change caused. The World Economic Forum explains what happened next in America. Quote, the growth from 1979 to 2018, however, has been drastically different. While net productivity has continued to increase by an expected 70%, hourly compensation in the country is less than a fifth of that at just 12%. That means you were just as productive and worked just as hard, but you didn't get the rewards of that labor. While your productivity continued to soar, they stopped increasing your wages to match it. To show you what that looks like, see the graph on page 76. That's the graph that I referred to, but I'm going to show you in the writing what I'm referring to there. And as you see here, guys, congrats, American workers. You did an amazing job. Your productivity from 1938 all the way to now has been record-breaking. So all the times that you see the politicians talking to you about how oh, the average guy's lazy and we need to make sure they work. No, you guys are working your ass off, but your wages flatlined. So let me read you the rest, which is more devastating. The Economic Policy Institute calculated that if your wages had kept up with your productivity in that same time period, the median hourly wages adjusted for inflation in 2017 would have been $33.10. Now remember, that's not the minimum wage. This is the median wage for all American workers. Instead, the median hourly wage in America in 2017 was $23.15. That looks like a big difference, about $10 an hour for every hour worked for the average American worker. So what does that come out to per year? According to an In These Times calculation, that meant that the average worker in the US lost $17,385 that year because their wages hadn't kept up with their productivity. Holy shit, they've been taking about $17,000 a year out of your pocket for all that time. Imagine how much more you could afford and how much better your life would have been if you had that money. That's what economic injustice looks like. How much did American workers lose in 2017 alone because the wealth was redistributed to the top? According to those same calculations, $1.78 trillion. The people at the top of the economic ladder have been taking trillions of dollars out of your pockets every year as the corporate media cover their tracks. Both mainstream media and right-wing media, the two arms of corporate media, distract us with the culture wars while they execute this robbery year after year. Where did all that extra money that should have gone to you go instead? Corporate profits, of course. And by the way, I show you the corporate profit chart in the book as well. This is class warfare done in the dark of night. But when we ask to go back to a place we used to have, in America where everyone was treated fairly, they say we are waging class warfare. How dare we not accept our position beneath them? Now run along, everybody, and make sure you fight each other instead of us. Yes, as you see in this book, a lot of our fights are progressives versus conservatives. But this one, the granddaddy of them all, is more corporate elites versus the rest of us, the establishment versus the populace. Okay, so there's a lot more where that came from. Obviously, that's the point of the book. But isn't that devastating, guys? $17,000 a year. Every year they take out of your pocket, in essence. And by the way, every fact in the book, quadruple checked, 30 pages of footnotes at the end, you could, or end notes, you could check them yourself. So, all right, now I'll take a couple of questions here, and I got a couple more segments I want to read for you guys. Moonshine Dragon wrote in, which book / Bible / Quran will Cenk put his hand on for swearing in? Or will he swear in on justice is coming? That is hilarious. So today I explained on TYT that I'm considering a run for president. If I got sworn in on justice is coming, that would be the funniest thing that ever happened. Okay, and I love you for thinking of that. But unlikely. Unlikely that it'll be any of the books that you mentioned there. Darwin's book is probably more likely. I don't know. Wouldn't it be great if we had that bridge to cross? Okay. Biden flavored corn pipe asks a good question. The shop TYT availability just keeps being sold out, but I will be getting my copy from bookshop.org next week. Gonna read it on my way to my vacation in Hawaii. I appreciate you guys. We're doing the best we can. One of the reasons that we didn't sell that many autograph versions through Shop TYT was because we were worried that the New York Times would keep us off the bestseller list even if we sold enough books. Oh well, they kept us off the list even though we sold enough books anyway. So I wish would have gotten you more autographed versions, but I'm sure we will down the road. Okay, and. Okay, let me see. The jackass. Was the bestseller list conspiracy solved yet? Guys, no, I don't know. And I don't know that there is a conspiracy. I don't know if there's anything to be solved. Some books on the list that were above me on the list sold less than me, but some sold more. And so it's a mixed bag. I don't know. I don't know that the people doing that care about the rest of the New York Times. But did I criticize the New York Times aggressively in the book? Yes, I did. Okay, do I criticize mainstream media aggressively? I mean, you just heard a section of it. Yes. In fact, the next section I'm going to read for you guys is out of the chapter 5 called The Matrix, which is about mainstream media. And I'll answer one more question here before we go to the break. What chapter do you think will resonate best with conservatives? Well, I think that they probably like chapter 5 a lot because it goes after mainstream media, even though I use examples of mainstream media being in favor of the right wing, but also in favor of the Iraq war, which back then was right wing, but now no longer is. So I'm not sure how they're gonna feel about that. Chapter 4 shows how we lost our democracy and how we lost the Democratic Party. I'd be really surprised if right wingers didn't really like chapter 4. And then chapter 6 is about how we're gonna win. If by that point in the book, they might be with us and not against us. So they might be excited about that. And there's a bunch of things in there about how we're gonna fight corruption together with conservatives. And chapter 7 is what happens when progressives win. And if they read that part, they'll be like, oh, that doesn't sound so bad. I kind of like all those things. So everything from chapter 3 on. Why? Because chapter 3 is why Republicans suck. So let's keep it real. That's also in there. And you need to know that. You need to know that. What went wrong with the Republican Party? And I'm fair. I also talk about what went wrong with the Democratic Party. Okay, so it's at tyt.com/justice. The audiobook list is still coming out for the New York Times. So it could still be a bestseller. Let's see how it goes. That'll be later this week. But we appreciate you buying any version of the book. We love you for it. tyt.com/justice. And we're gonna take a break here. We're gonna come back for members. I'm gonna read at least one more segment if we have time, 2 more segments, and take more of your questions. So if you wanna be a member, you can hit the join button below on YouTube, or everyone else, you can get it at tyt.com/join. That's how you get membership. All right, members, I'll see you in a minute.
Don't allow the powerful to see you feeling hopeless. Even if you do feel hopeless, wallow in your pity and your misery. And I believe me, I do it